Let's continue the conversation around the Phala farm scandal, because Hazim Mustafa, this is the man named in the saga, says he didn't know that the $580,000, that Buffalo deal, was with President Cyril Ramaphosa, and that he's still waiting for a refund. So let's get a clear understanding of who this man is. Yousra Elbagir is a Sky News Africa journalist who managed to speak to Mr. Mustafa. She joins me now to share her experience. Yousra, thank you very much for your time. Let's start with what or how Mr. Mustafa says he managed to bring $580,000 into the country. Was that checked by South African authorities?
He claims that he declared it, and we're still working on getting these documents from him, because he quite plainly said that he brought the cash through OR Tambo, through the airport in Johannesburg, and that he claimed it. But he also just kept asserting that he felt like this wasn't a lot of money at all, and he just didn't understand what the big deal was around this purchase.
Is he giving any detail as to when he says he declared it, to whom did he declare this money?
He says he declared it at the airport. The detail, this was the thing. This is where we felt as a team that we had hit a wall with him. When pressing him on sort of the declaration proceedings and the paperwork, he was very clear that he didn't feel comfortable sharing that, and alluded to the parliamentary process as the reason why. But when it came to, handing over any sort of evidence around how he brought this cash in, we hit a wall.
Yeah. And the actual use of the cash, was that from his side, or was this a pre-arranged deal? Were you able to put those sort of questions to him?
Yeah, so we asked him sort of what the circumstances were of the purchase, and he said that he was in town with his wife, who's South African. It was his birthday. They were celebrating Christmas. And that he, came across the farm. He had no idea at the time that it was the president's farm. He didn't know who the buffalo belonged to, but that he just made the purchase with a broker from the farm. His tone was very nonchalant. I mean, what we kept getting, and what I really felt speaking to him, is that he just kind of walked into this. And I think it's important to look at his profile as a businessman, as a Sudanese businessman, to understand why he would kind of conduct such a frivolous business deal without even sort of any negotiations beforehand, or any communication or research beforehand. I mean, this is a man who came to the forefront of the Sudanese public space over the last 2 years as the head of one of the main football teams. But his business dealings before then are very clandestine. He was actually investigated last year by the Ethics Committee of the Football Association for his business dealings in 2007. So he's not someone that, is known to be transparent in his business dealings. And I think, from what he was saying, $580,000, he said, is nothing to a businessman like me. He said, from my car to my shoes, I go to my office as of this morning, there's $1.5 million rolling. And that's his approach.
Very, very interesting character indeed. Before we get to the actual goods that he purchased, Yousra, the cattle, let me ask about, now that he knows whose farm this was, where this deal was done, does he feel a need to perhaps reveal more or give us any sort of paperwork, given the gravity of the situation around our president?
I mean, you'll be interested to know that he did have some sort of political analysis at hand. He said that this is a standard business deal, but that he felt like a political game was being played. And from the sounds of it, he didn't want any part of it. He was like, I'm just a businessman who has been waiting for my animals to be prepared for export. Because of COVID-19, there was delay after delay after delay. And he said very clearly that there's an understanding that he will be refunded. And that, for us as a team, Voldy Carl, South Africa producer, and I sat down and looked at that. That seemed to be one of the main discrepancies between his idea of what happened and what has come to surface recently, that he will be refunded his money.
Let's then talk about the purchase of these cattle. Why is he expecting a refund? Because quite clearly, he has not fetched these cattle. Why did he purchase or make a purchase and not take delivery of the goods?
I mean, he was expecting for that. He says animals go through preparation for export. In his understanding of the deal, the cattle would be sent to him. They would be exported to him, and that didn't happen. He also, pressing him on his understanding of South African politics, he said that asked him if he knew that it was unconstitutional for the president to conduct private business dealings, and he said, "Oh, I didn't know that." But why would he then have this farm why would this farm exist as an ongoing business? I think it's important to understand that he's a very black and white businessman. His understanding of the South African political sphere, it seems quite limited. For him, it's very straightforward. I paid for buffaloes, they didn't arrive, and it's been 3 years, and I'm expecting a refund, naturally.
And is there indication from him as to the people that he is dealing with, understanding now that he is dealing with an entity, or he is dealing with a farm that belongs to a head of state in South Africa? What kinds of conversations are going on right now as to this understanding that he is likely to get a refund? Why a refund? Is it...
He didn't go into what the state of play is now beyond his expectation of a refund. From what it sounded like, he was saying this is a political game. I'm not interested. For me, I just made this transaction. I wanted to purchase some buffaloes. My wife is South African, he said repetitively, and that's why he was there, and that's what he thought he was walking into. I think it turned out to be a lot more complicated than he bargained for. And again, not wanting to hand over documentation, I think, is a clear sign of his reluctance to be involved in the parliamentary proceedings moving forward, because that, as he knows, is very important evidence.
And I take it as a final question to you that he is not prepared, or he would not be prepared to come and testify on this matter, given his outline or understanding of this is a political theater that's possibly going on now.
There was no indication that he had any intention of testifying. The man said, "I'm in Doha." He's out there celebrating the World Cup as someone who's into football and is involved in football. It sounds like a political mess that he wants no real involvement in. But who knows? Maybe he can be convinced to come forward and testify and move this case forward.
Any other information that stood out for you during the course of your interview with him?
I think, again, it was how nonchalant he was about this, about how $580,000 is nothing to him when, the president is facing potential impeachment over the sale and the subsequent theft of foreign currency. So I think his general disconnect from how serious, how grave this is for us as a team was very shocking. And I think it goes to show just how many parts there are and just how little is really understood by all parties involved in this event.
Very, very interesting indeed. And well done to you for securing this interview. Yousra Elbagir is a Sky News Africa journalist talking to us about the conversation she had with the man who purchased the cattle, the Ankole, from the president's farm. Let's take you further afield now.